Since the beginning of time, humans have always fought within themselves, and regardless of what you think of Africa and the Middle East, conflict within the human race is as old as time. And it's not just confined to a certain race, a group, or even religion, but rather even in this age of development and in the possible future, there will always be conflict at some point in time. And that's because conflict is encrypted in the very essence of our DNA as human beings. Well, in this episode, we'll be looking and taking a deep dive into Africa's most deadliest conflict and understanding the reason for the conflict, the process of the conflict, and the possible lesson we could learn from it. So please, if you've not liked this video, like this video and subscribe, because it won't hurt you if you do subscribe or like the video, but it will actually hurt me if you don't. Please like this video and subscribe as I take you through Africa's most deadliest wars and conflicts, and let's get right to the video. So let's start with the conflict that hit deep at home. The conflict that ended over 50 years ago, but its residual pain, trauma and outcome is still being extremely felt 50-something years later. I'm talking about the Nigerian Civil War, otherwise known as the Biafran War, which began on the 6th of July 1967 and ended on the 15th of January 1970 with a surrender from the successionist nation of Biafra. The war came as a result of ethnic distrust and disunity between the three major tribes, which are the Hausa Fulani Muslims in the north, the Yorubas in the southwest, and the Igbos in the southeast. But if we dive a little bit further to the actual precursor for the war came as a result of the first military coup d'etat, which was actually carried out by predominantly junior officers who were of Igbo origin, spearheaded notably by Major Kaduna Nzogu, Emmanuel Efejuna, Adewale Ademoyega, and more. The coup plot had killed a total number of 22 people, notably the Sultana of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Prime Minister of the country as of the time, Sir Tafawa Balewa, and the Minister of Finance, Chief Festus Okotie-Eboh, and few others. But according to Major Adewale Ademoyega, a member of the January 1966 coup, in his book Why We Struck, he stated that there was no decision during the planning of the coup to single out any ethnic group for elimination, and their intentions were honorable and their goals was idealistic. But the Northerners wasn't yielding to the excuse of the major, as it would be unintelligible and naive for them to accept the assassination of their high-ranking Northern leaders, even when there was no notable high-ranking leader of Eastern origin being assassinated alongside them during that time frame. Well, 6 months later, on the 28th to 30th of July 1966, the Northern Fulani faction of the military retaliated with a counter-coup led by Lieutenant Colonel Muratala Mohammed and Theophilus Danjuma. It is important to note that the violence from the counter-coup didn't just end with the assassination of the then head of state, Major General Agu Irusi, but rather it persisted during the time of his successor, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon. The unjustifiable retaliation and targeted genocidal killings of innocent Igbo civilians in the northern part of Nigeria increased immensely as they had to seek refuge at home in the southeast. But after more dialogue between the then Eastern Region Governor, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, and the federal government for the security of the Igbo people in the north, the killings still intensified, prompting the Eastern Region to declare its sovereignty and independence as a newly formed nation. But the Nigerian government and our main ally, the UK government, wasn't having it as it sought to maintain its influence and its investment in the newly discovered oil industry in the southern part of Nigeria, even to the extent of supporting and participating in the mass starvation and genocidal annihilation of over 3 million Biafrans during the course of the war from 1967 to 1970 under the pretext of a one Nigeria ideology and policy. Fast forward 50 years later, the Igbos in the southeast are still being marginalized. The insecurity in the country is at an all-time high. 80% of the population are living below poverty line, and nothing significant has been achieved for the past 50 years apart from excessive exploitation of the Nigerian resources. And the country is still experiencing the same issues and injustice, which was the main reason for the war in the first place. Like I said earlier at the beginning of this video, conflict goes beyond ethnicity, religions, and belief, but rather it transcends all this and is encrypted in the DNA of every human being, which is then reflected in the human society. And the Rwandan genocide, which was a product of the Rwandan civil war, proves my point, where countrymen of the same culture, tradition, and religion killed themselves based on sheer hatred and superficial beliefs. Most of the reason for the conflict that has occurred or is ongoing in the continent of Africa has been either for its land and resources, religious belief, or power. But none have been fought intensively for nothing rather than deep hatred for one another than the Rwandan Civil War, which began on 1st of October 1990 and ended on July 18, 1994, which brought about the Rwandan genocide that started on the 7th of April 1994 to the 15th of July 1994. When we previously discussed the Nigerian Civil War, it was duly noted that the Igbo Christians in the south and the Hausa Fulani Muslims in the north clearly had two different distinct traditions, language, religions, and even morphological representation. But it was different in Rwanda, as the Tutsis and the Hutus were practically the same and had the same culture, language, and tradition. So if the Tutsi and the Hutu people were so similar to the point of having a common language of Bandaya-Rwanda, and even at its greatest height between 1835 to 1895, we were ruled under the stewardship of the great leader King Kingeli Rwambiri. We then ask ourselves, where did it all go wrong, from a united front to a genocidal nation? Well, like most problems associated with Africa, the root and answer can be traced to colonialism. Let me explain further. When the German colonizers established their presence in Rwanda and Burundi in 1897, they favored the Tutsis over the Hutus, believing them to be racially superior based on their Cushic appearance. But after the Germans lost the First World War, the Rwandan colony was handed over to Belgium in 1917, and they continued the policies of their predecessors by favoring the Tutsis over the Hutus, leaving the Hutus disenfranchised. It became worse when the colonizers introduced identity card, further dividing the Tutsi, the Hutu, and the Twa people into various groups, making it impossible for them to naturalize with one another. Previously, it was possible for a particular wealthy Hutu to become an honorary Tutsi. The identity card made it impossible for integration between one another, and it turned the Rwandan society from a socio-economic group into a strict, rigid ethno-linguistic group, which was very, very bad. And with favoritism from the colonizers towards the Tutsi, there was bound to be resentment from the Hutus. But let's fast forward to the early 60s, during the brink of independence from Belgium. It is important to note that the colonizers replaced the Tutsi chief and administrators, replacing them with the Hutu majority, thereby changing the wheel of power. But after Rwanda got its independence in 1962, the Tutsis feared retaliation from the Hutus, so they fled to the neighboring Uganda, Tanzania, and Congo, including a young Paul Kagame. More on that later, but the refugees in these countries formed rebel armed groups and occasionally launched attacks into Rwanda once in a while. So fast forward to the 80s, where this guy Fred Rwigema, with his 500 Rwandan soldiers and refugees, assisted Yoweri Museveni in overthrowing Milton Obote in the Ugandan Bush War. And with the newly formed powerful ally in Museveni, Rwigema, under the banner of the Rwandan Patriotic Front (RPF), advanced 60 km into Rwanda but was subsequently killed by the Rwandan government, and he was later replaced by his deputy, Paul Kagame, who took power and retreated back to the Ugandan Virunga Mountains. The RPF subsequently made the Virunga Mountain their base for targeted and occasional guerrilla warfare against the Rwandan government until June 1992, where the RPF and the Rwandan government agreed to a ceasefire and went to the negotiating table, even to the extent that the RPF was given a base in the National Parliamentary Building in Kigali. It is important to know that there was a lot of tension during the period of the ceasefire and the negotiation. Well, all hell broke loose when on the 6th of April 1994, the airplane carrying the Rwandan president Juvenal Habyarimana and Cyprien Ntaryamira, the president of Burundi, was shot down, killing everyone on board. This singular act was the trigger for the genocide that lasted for 100 days. And even though there was evidence suggesting that there was an impending genocide even before the actual assassination of the president, till this day, no one knows the actual culprit that is responsible for the assassination of the two presidents. This gave rise to genocidal killing, where over 800,000 Tutsis were killed and over 250,000 women were raped, And all these devilish atrocities was perpetrated by their Hutsi neighbors and their fellow countrymen, not the white man, but their fellow Hutsi neighbor, from the 7th of April to the 15th of July 1994. Well, after the RPF took power and managed to defeat the Rwandan Hutu-led government, Paul Kagame transformed the country into an energetic and hopeful nation, making them one of the fastest growing economy in the world. Well guys, I'm all out and I really appreciate you for sticking with me to the end of this video. I just want to let you know that this is like the first part of the series I'm making on African conflict, and hopefully the next part will be on Congo and possibly the Sudan conflict. So I really appreciate you once again for sticking with me to the end of this video, and I hope you guys like this video and subscribe. And I really appreciate it. Like I said before, like this video and subscribe, because it won't hurt you if you do, but it will actually hurt me if you don't. So thank you very much and I appreciate it. See you in the next video.